I'm Commander Audrey Bailey, 34 years old, and the moment my father introduced me as his little clerk who pushes papers to his SEAL team buddy, I knew something was about to break. What he didn't know was that the man he was bragging to had been under my command 6 months earlier during a hostage extraction in Somalia. Tell me in the comments, have you ever watched someone brag about you to the very person who knows the truth? Let me back up for just a second. I need you to understand what happened that Memorial Day weekend, because what followed changed everything between my father and me, and there was no going back. It was a Saturday afternoon in Virginia, unseasonably hot for late May. I'd driven 4 hours from Quantico to my father's house for his annual barbecue. I was exhausted. I'd just come off a 48-hour operation cycle, the kind where you don't sleep. You just manage crisis after crisis until your team is safely extracted. But I'd promised I'd come, and I kept my promises, even the ones that cost me. I pulled up to his small ranch house around 1 in the afternoon. The driveway was already crowded with trucks and a Jeep with veteran plates. I could hear voices in the backyard, smell charcoal and beer. I sat in my car for a moment, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror. Civilian clothes, jeans, and a loose cotton shirt. My auburn hair down instead of in its regulation bun. I deliberately dressed down, made myself smaller the way I always did when I came home. I touched the compass necklace at my throat, my mother's. She'd given it to me 2 weeks before she died when I was 17. "Don't let anyone make you small, Audrey," she'd said. I'd been trying to honor that for 17 years. But around my father, I always seemed to shrink. When I walked around the side of the house into the backyard, my father saw me first. Robert Bailey, 64 years old, retired Navy Lieutenant Commander, 30 years of logistics and supply chain management. He was standing near the grill with a beer in his hand, talking to 3 men I didn't recognize. "There she is!" he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My little office clerk is home." Several people chuckled. I forced a smile and kept walking. This was normal. This was the script we'd followed for 15 years. My father met me halfway across the yard and pulled me into a one-armed hug. "Look at you, all casual. You come from work or something?" "Just drove in from Quantico," I said. He nodded absently, already turning back to his friends. "Guys, this is my daughter, Audrey. She's in the Navy. Does all the intel paperwork and coordination stuff. Real brain work, you know. Not exactly kicking down doors, but somebody's got to do it." The men smiled and nodded. One of them, older with a faded Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm, shook my hand. "Logistics?" he asked. "Intelligence and special operations coordination," I said carefully. He nodded like he didn't know the difference. "Important work. Someone's gotta keep the paperwork straight." I smiled and said nothing. I'd learned years ago that correcting people didn't change their minds. They heard what they wanted to hear. The younger man stepped forward. He was maybe 41, with the build and bearing of someone who still ran 10 miles before breakfast. Sharp eyes, calm intensity, the kind you see in operators who've spent years in bad places. He extended his hand, and I shook it. "Commander Ethan Cross," he said. "Good to meet you, ma'am." "Likewise," I said, noting the deference in his tone. He'd called me ma'am without knowing my rank. That meant something. My father clapped Cross on the shoulder. Ethan here just got back from a rotation overseas. Can't talk about it, of course, but let's just say he's been keeping the bad guys on their toes. He grinned proudly, like Cross was his own son. Real warrior, this one. Cross smiled politely but said nothing. I liked him immediately. We moved toward the grill. My father handed me a beer, and the conversation shifted to safe topics. Sports, weather, the usual things men default to when they're not sure what to say. I stood at the edge of the group, half listening, trying to decide how long I needed to stay before I could make an excuse and leave. My father's girlfriend, Patricia, emerged from the house with a tray of burger buns. She was 58, former Army nurse, and had been dating my father for 3 years. She smiled at me warmly. Audrey, sweetheart, it's so good to see you. Your father's been talking about you all week. Has he? I said, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, yes, he's so proud. He tells everyone about his daughter in the Navy. She patted my arm and went back inside. I took a long drink of my beer. Proud. Right. My younger brother David arrived 20 minutes later. He was 30, a software engineer in Richmond, and the golden child who'd never had to fight for approval. He hugged me and said, Hey sis, how's the Navy treating you? Can't complain, I said. Still doing the intelligence thing? Yeah, still doing the intelligence thing. He nodded and wandered off to grab a beer. He'd never asked what I actually did. No one in my family had. The afternoon wore on. More guests arrived, most of them my father's retired Navy buddies and their families. He held court near the grill, telling sea stories from his logistics days, making everyone laugh. He was good at this, good at being the center of attention, and every time someone asked about me, he had the same answer. Audrey does all the coordination work, schedules, reports, making sure the right people are in the right place, important stuff. Even if it's not glamorous, she's got a real head for details. Each time something twisted in my chest, but I smiled and nodded and played the part. The good daughter, the quiet one, the clerk. Then my watch slipped. I was reaching for my beer when it happened. The leather band had loosened in the heat, and when I extended my arm, it slid up my forearm about 2 inches. Just enough to reveal the tattoo. It was small, discreet, positioned right below where my sleeve would normally fall. A trident with the number 77 beneath it. I'd gotten it 6 years ago when Unit 77 was still new and we were still figuring out what we were. It had been a stupid decision. Officers aren't supposed to get unit tattoos. But I'd been younger then, and it had felt important, a mark of belonging to something that mattered. I'd kept it covered ever since, hidden under long sleeves, under watch bands, under the careful construction of my civilian persona. But now in the Virginia heat, wearing short sleeves, it was visible, and Commander Ethan Cross saw it. He was mid-sentence, saying something about training rotations when his eyes dropped to my forearm. He stopped talking. His expression shifted from casual to something else. Recognition, maybe disbelief. He stared at the tattoo for a long moment, then looked up at my face, then back at the tattoo. Unit 77, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I nodded once. That's right. The yard didn't go quiet yet. Most people hadn't noticed. But Cross had gone very still, and I could see his mind working, putting pieces together. My rank, my age, the tattoo, the fact that I'd just come from Quantico. The fact that my father had introduced me as a clerk. When Cross finally spoke, his voice was careful, almost hesitant. He turned to my father. "Sir," he said, "do you know who your daughter is?" And just like that, everything changed. But they had no idea what was coming next. Before I tell you what happened in that backyard, you need to understand how I got there. You need to understand the pattern, because this wasn't one moment. This was 15 years of moments just like it, stacking up like sandbags until the wall finally broke. I grew up knowing what duty meant before I knew how to spell it. My father, Robert Bailey, retired as a lieutenant commander after 30 years in Navy logistics. The kind of officer who made sure supplies arrived on time, who kept the machine running. He was meticulous, proud, and absolutely certain that real service happened in the field. Combat, boots on ground, everything else was just support work. I was 8 years old when he told me the military was no place for girls who couldn't carry a rock. I was 12 when he stopped including me in conversations with his Navy buddies. They'd sit in our living room, drinking beer and telling sea stories, and I'd try to join in, try to ask questions. My father would smile and pat my head and say, "This is grown-up talk, sweetheart. Why don't you go help your mother in the kitchen?" My mother, Helen, was the one who believed in me. She'd been a public school teacher before she got sick, and she saw things in me my father couldn't or wouldn't. When I was 17, 2 weeks before I graduated high school, she sat me down in her hospital room. Stage 4 cancer. We both knew she didn't have much time. "Audrey," she said, her voice thin and tired, "I need you to promise me something." "Anything, Mom." "Don't let anyone make you small. Not your father, not the military, not anyone. You're going to do extraordinary things. Don't let them convince you you're ordinary." She died 4 days later. At her funeral, my father told people she'd been proud of both her children. He spent 20 minutes talking about David's acceptance to Virginia Tech. When someone asked about me, he said, "Audrey's thinking about college, maybe teaching like her mother." I'd already been accepted to the Naval Academy. I just hadn't told him yet. When I finally showed him the acceptance letter, he read it twice. Then he set it down on the kitchen table and said, "You'll wash out, but I'll support the attempt." Those words burned themselves into my memory. Not, "I'm proud of you." Not, "You can do this." Just, "You'll wash out." I didn't wash out. I went to the Naval Academy at 18 and threw myself into everything. Academics, physical training, leadership courses. I graduated in the top 10% of my class and accepted my commission as an ensign at 22. My father attended the ceremony. He sat in the back row and left during the reception. He had a golf game he couldn't miss. My early years were spent in intelligence, first as a junior analyst aboard a destroyer, then in joint operations planning at a shore facility in San Diego. I was good at connecting dots others missed, at anticipating enemy movements through fragments of intercepted communications and satellite imagery. By 26, I was a lieutenant. By 30, I'd made lieutenant commander. I coordinated with SEAL teams, Marine Force recon units, Air Force special operations. I learned their language, their rhythms, the way they thought about risk and execution. I also learned they didn't take me seriously until I'd proven myself 3 times over. At 31, I was selected to command an intelligence fusion cell in Bahrain. It was a deployment that would define my career. We provided real-time intelligence for strike packages hitting high-value targets across 2 theaters. I coordinated operations that saved lives, prevented attacks, changed the course of engagements most people would never hear about. I received a Navy Commendation Medal for my work there. When I came home and showed my father, he looked at it for about 5 seconds and said, "Those are pretty easy to get in desk jobs, aren't they?" I put the medal in a box and didn't show him anything after that. At 32, I was promoted to commander. That's an O5 rank, equivalent to a lieutenant colonel in the Army or Air Force. It's the rank where you stop being a junior officer and start being someone who makes decisions that matter. I called my father to tell him. He was at a hardware store. I could hear the background noise, the intercom announcements, the forklift beeping. "That's great, Audrey, really great," he said. "Hey, I've got to grab some lumber before they close. We'll talk later." We didn't talk later. 3 weeks passed before he called again, and when he did, he didn't mention the promotion. He asked if I knew anyone who could help his buddy's nephew get a job on base. That same year, I was read into Unit 77. It wasn't a unit you applied for. It was a unit that found you. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was a joint special operations task force specializing in clandestine recovery operations, hostages, downed pilots, compromised intelligence assets. We pulled people out of places no one else could reach. I started as the executive officer under a 2-star admiral who was 3 years from retirement. He told me during our first meeting that I'd been selected because I had a rare combination of operational intuition and bureaucratic patience. "You know how to fight and how to wait," he said. "That's what this job takes." 18 months later, when he retired, I took command. At 33, I was one of the youngest officers ever to command a Tier 1 Joint Special Operations unit. I couldn't tell my father. The unit was classified, but I dropped hints. "I got a new assignment," I told him during one of our monthly phone calls. "Oh yeah? More coordination work?" "Something like that. Can't really talk about it." "Classified paperwork," he said, like he'd figured it out. "Well, someone's got to keep the files organized." I didn't correct him. Over the next year, Unit 77 ran successful operations across 3 continents. We extracted a kidnapped journalist from Yemen. We recovered a downed reconnaissance pilot from hostile territory in Syria. We pulled out a compromised CIA asset from Eastern Europe before enemy forces could capture him. Each operation required precision, split-second decision-making, and the kind of risk management that kept me awake for days at a time. Each one worked because my team trusted me, because I'd proven myself over and over, because in the special operations community, I'd earned a reputation as someone who got it done. They started calling me the Ghost, not because I was invisible, but because my operations happened and no one ever knew Unit 77 had been there. We went in, accomplished the mission, and vanished exactly the way it was supposed to work. My father called during one of those operations. I was in a tactical operations center, watching real-time feeds from 3 different teams, coordinating air support and extraction timing. My phone buzzed. I saw his name and almost didn't answer, but I did. "Hey, Dad, I'm actually in the middle of something. Can I call you back?" "Oh, sure. I just wanted to tell you about this reunion I went to." Remember Jake Harrison's son? He just made SEAL Team 6. Now that's a real accomplishment. I looked at the screens in front of me. 3 SEAL teams, 2 Marine Force recon units, 1 Delta squad, all of them operating under my command, executing a plan I designed. "That's great, Dad," I said. "I really have to go." "Okay, honey, stay safe at your desk." I hung up and went back to work. 6 months before that Memorial Day barbecue, we ran the operation that would eventually expose everything. A hostage situation in Yemen, an American journalist kidnapped by a militant group being moved to a location where we'd lose track of her permanently. We had a 72-hour window to act. I designed the operation myself. Multi-vector assault, synchronized timing across 4 different teams, real-time intelligence feeding directly to operators on the ground. It was complex, dangerous, and had about a dozen points where everything could go wrong. It almost did. Commander Ethan Cross's SEAL team was the primary extraction unit. They breached the compound, secured the hostage, and were moving to the extraction point when they ran into an enemy quick reaction force. Ambush. They were pinned down, taking fire, with casualties and no clear way out. I watched it happen in real time from 7,000 miles away, saw the situation deteriorating, saw the window closing. I made the call to send in the secondary teams immediately. Full assault, punch through the enemy position, create an exit corridor. It was aggressive. It was risky. It violated about 4 different rules of engagement protocols. It also worked. We extracted Cross's entire team, the hostage, and 2 wounded operators. Everyone came home. The operation was classified, buried in files no one would ever read, and erased from public record. But in the special operations community, people knew. They knew Unit 77 had pulled off something extraordinary. Commander Cross knew. He'd been there. He'd seen the plan work, seen the precision, seen the aggressive decision-making that had saved his life and the lives of his team. But he'd never met me. He'd only known Unit 77 through call signs and command channels. He had no idea the voice coordinating his extraction belonged to the woman his friend had just introduced as a clerk. All of this ran through my mind in the seconds after Cross said my father's name. All the years of dismissal, all the times I'd tried to tell him what I did, all the moments he changed the subject or minimized my work or compared me unfavorably to someone else's son. And now, standing in this backyard at this barbecue, the man who'd saved was about to tell my father the truth I'd been trying to tell him for 15 years. But I couldn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. And I couldn't take it anymore. That was the last straw. I'd made a decision right there. If Commander Cross wanted to tell the truth, I wasn't going to stop him. Whatever happened next, I'd earned it. The backyard had gone quiet, not completely silent. Someone's kid was still playing with a football near the fence, and I could hear Patricia in the kitchen through the open window. But the adult conversation had stopped. Everyone was looking at Commander Cross, then at my father, then at me. My father blinked, confused. "What do you mean, Jake? She's Audrey. She works in intelligence coordination." Cross didn't answer immediately. He was still staring at my tattoo, and I could see the exact moment his brain finished processing. His posture shifted. He straightened, his hands dropping to his sides. And when he looked at me again, there was something new in his expression, recognition, and respect. "Sir," he said, addressing my father, but keeping his eyes on me, "may I speak with you privately?" My father laughed, uncertain. "What's this about?" Cross turned to me. "Commander Bailey, ma'am. Permission to speak freely?" Commander Bailey. He'd said my rank out loud, in front of everyone. The yard got quieter. The Marine veteran stopped mid-sip of his beer. David, who'd been scrolling through his phone, looked up. Patricia appeared in the doorway, dish towel in hand. My father's face went through several expressions in quick succession: confusion, doubt, then something that might have been embarrassment. "Commander, Audrey's not a—" "Yes, sir, she is," Cross said. His voice was respectful but firm. "Commander Audrey Bailey, United States Navy, '05 rank, and unless I'm very much mistaken." He looked at me again. "You're about to be promoted to captain." I nodded once. 3 weeks, the ceremonies at Quantico. Cross's eyebrows went up. At 34, that's—" He shook his head. "That's extraordinary, ma'am." My father was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Captain? You're going to be a captain?" "Yes," I said simply. But you never—" He trailed off, looking around at his friends, at Cross, back to me. "You never said anything." "I've been trying to tell you for 12 years, Dad. You didn't want to hear it." The Marine veteran set his beer down carefully. "Hold on. You're a Navy commander? As in you command things?" Before I could answer, Cross spoke up. "She commands Unit 77, sir." And there it was, out in the open. The secret I'd kept for years, the work I'd done in silence, the identity my father had refused to see. The Marine veteran's expression changed. "Unit 77. I've heard that name. Can't remember where, but—" He frowned, thinking. "Special operations?" "Joint Task Force," Cross said. He turned to me. "Ma'am, I apologize. I didn't mean to compromise operational security, but your father deserves to know who you are." "It's fine, Commander Vu," I said. My voice came out steady, controlled, even though I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. "Unit 77's existence isn't classified, just our operations." My father was shaking his head slowly. "I don't understand. You said you did intelligence work, coordination. You said—" "I do intelligence work," I cut in. "I also plan and execute special operations missions. That's what coordination means in my world, Dad. I coordinate SEAL teams, Marine Force recon, Delta operators, air support, intelligence assets, and extraction logistics for high-risk operations in hostile territory. That's my job. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years." Silence. Then my father said, voice small, "Why didn't you tell me?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out sharp and bitter. "I tried. Every time I came home, I tried. Remember when I told you about my deployment to Bahrain? You said it was desk work in the desert. Remember when I tried to explain the fusion cell? You changed the subject. Remember when I got my commendation medal? You said those were easy to get." His face had gone pale. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." I was done. 15 years of swallowing my hurt, of making myself smaller, of accepting his dismissals. I was done. "You've spent my entire career telling everyone I'm a clerk. A paper pusher." someone who does admin work while the real warriors do the real job. You've introduced me that way to your friends, to strangers, to people who might have actually understood what I do if you'd just let me tell them. Patricia had come out onto the patio. Audrey, honey, your father didn't mean any harm. With respect, Patricia, you don't know what he meant. I turned back to my father. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Coming home after missions I can't talk about, operations that would make your hair stand on end, and having you pat me on the head and tell your buddies I shuffle papers. My brother David had put his phone away. He was standing now, looking between me and our father with something like horror on his face. Audrey, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said more gently. He never let anyone know. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I thought you were safe. I thought if you were doing administrative work, you wouldn't be in danger. I'm in danger every time I run an operation, Dad. I've been in danger for years. You just convinced yourself I wasn't because that was easier than accepting what I actually do. Cross had been standing quietly through this, but now he spoke. Sir, if I may. My father looked at him and Cross continued. 6 months ago, my SEAL team was in Yemen. We were executing a hostage extraction that went sideways. We were pinned down, taking fire, with 2 wounded and no clear exit route. We should have died there. Everyone was listening now. Even the kid with the football had stopped playing. Unit 77 mounted a real-time rescue operation, Cross said. They coordinated a multi-vector assault that punched through enemy lines with precision I've never seen before. They got us out. They saved 6 of my men and the hostage we'd been sent to rescue. He turned to me. Your daughter commanded that operation, sir. She was 7,000 miles away, watching feeds, making calls, directing teams through hostile territory in real time. She made decisions that saved my life and the lives of my team. My father was staring at Cross. That was Audrey. Yes, sir. Commander Bailey is one of the finest tactical minds in the special operations community. We request her unit specifically for high-risk operations because we know if she's running it, we're coming home. The Marine veteran was nodding slowly. I remember now, Yemen extraction. It was all over the quiet channels. Nobody could figure out who pulled it off. He looked at me with new eyes. That was you? I nodded. My unit, my plan. Jesus, he said softly. My father sat down heavily in a nearby lawn chair. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. I didn't know, he whispered. Audrey, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said. And maybe that was the truest thing I'd ever said to him. Cross cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, your daughter has done extraordinary things. She deserves better than being called a clerk. My father didn't respond. He just sat there, staring at the ground, his hands clasped between his knees. I felt something break open inside me. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a deep, aching sadness for all the years we'd wasted. For the relationship we could have had if he'd just been willing to see me. I'm going to go, I said quietly. I have work tomorrow. Audrey, wait. My father started to stand. I'll call you later, Dad. I looked at David. Can you make sure he's okay? My brother nodded. his face stricken. Yeah, of course. I turned across and extended my hand. Commander, thank you for your service and for your discretion. He shook my hand. Ma'am, the honor is mine. If you ever need anything, SEAL Team 7 has your back. I nodded, then walked through the silent crowd of my father's friends toward my car. Behind me, I heard Patricia say, Rob, are you all right? And I heard my father say, voice broken, I've been so stupid. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't look back. And for the first time in 15 years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The truth came out, and I held all the cards. They finally understood. But the question was, what came next? I didn't go back to Quantico, not right away. Instead, I drove to a state park about 30 miles from my father's house and sat in my car in an empty parking lot, watching the sun set through the trees. My phone buzzed constantly. Text messages, voicemails, all from my father's number. I didn't look at them. Not yet. I needed time to process what had just happened. For 15 years, I'd imagined the moment when my father would finally understand who I was. In my imagination, it had felt like victory, like vindication, like all the hurt would suddenly make sense and transform into something bearable. The reality was different. I just felt empty and tired. So tired. My phone rang again. This time it was David. I answered. Hey, Audrey. His voice was rough. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything right either. I should have noticed. I should have asked. I assumed Dad knew what he was talking about. He paused. After you left, he fell apart, completely fell apart. His friends tore into him. The Marine guy, Henderson, told him he was the dumbest man he'd ever met. Patricia's trying to calm him down, but he's just sitting there saying, I didn't know, over and over. He didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. David sighed. What do you need from me? Just make sure he's okay. And David? Don't let him pretend this didn't happen. Don't let him sweep it under the rug and go back to normal. If we're going to have any kind of relationship, it has to be different. I won't, he promised. Audrey, for what it's worth, I think you're amazing. What Commander Cross said about the Yemen operation, about your unit, I had no idea. I'm proud of you. Something in my chest loosened just a little. Thanks, David. That means a lot. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet for a while longer. Then I checked my voicemails. 7 from my father. I listened to the first one. Audrey, it's Dad. Please call me back. I need to talk to you. I need to... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please. His voice was shaking. I deleted it and listened to the next one. Similar. Then the next. By the 7th message, he was crying. I didn't know what to do with that. I'd never heard my father cry, not even at my mother's funeral. I drove back to Quantico in the dark. When I got to my quarters, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, my executive officer, was waiting in the hallway. Ma'am, she said, standing at attention. At ease, Chen. What are you doing here? Commander Cross called. He told me what happened. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I unlocked my door and gestured for her to come in. Chen was 29, brilliant, and one of the best tactical analysts I had ever worked with. She was also one of the few people in my life who knew the full story of my complicated relationship with my father. I'm fine, I said, dropping my keys on the counter. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Always. You don't look fine. You look like you've been hit by a truck. I laughed, surprised. Yeah, that's about how I feel. Chen pulled 2 beers from my fridge without asking and handed me one. So it finally happened. He finally found out. In the worst possible way, in front of all his friends. I took a long drink. You should have seen his face, Chen. He looked destroyed. Good, Chen said bluntly. He deserved it. I raised an eyebrow. That's a little harsh. Is it? Ma'am, you saved Commander Cross's life 6 months ago. You've run operations most flag officers can't even imagine. You're about to be promoted to captain at 34, which makes you one of the youngest 06s in Navy history. And your father's been calling you a clerk. She shook her head. He deserved to be embarrassed. Maybe now he'll actually see you. She wasn't wrong, but it still hurt. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our beers. Then Chen said, "What are you going to do?" "About my father." "Yeah." "I don't know. Part of me wants to let him suffer. Part of me wants to never speak to him again. And part of me—" I trailed off. "Part of you still wants him to be proud of you," Chen finished. I nodded. Stupid, right? No, human. She stood up. "Get some sleep, ma'am. Tomorrow's going to be intense." Words already spreading through the veteran community about what happened. Your father's going to have a lot of people talking. She was right. Over the next 3 days, my phone lit up with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old academy classmates, former commanding officers. Even Vice Admiral Catherine Brennan, my mentor, called. "Audrey," she said, her voice warm, "I heard about the barbecue. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, ma'am, just processing." "Your father's a fool," she said bluntly. "But most fathers are when it comes to their daughters in the military. Mine didn't understand what I did until I made Admiral. Even then, I'm not sure he fully grasped it." "How did you deal with it?" "I stopped seeking his approval and started building my own family. The people who understood, who respected the work, who saw me for who I was, that became my real family." She paused. "You've built that too, Audrey. Your unit adores you. The JSOC community requests you by name. You're respected at the highest levels of command. Don't let your father's blindness make you doubt that." "I won't," I promised. "Good. And Audrey, I'm proud of you. Your promotion ceremony is in 3 weeks. I'll be there." After I hung up, I thought about what she'd said, about building your own family, about being seen by the people who mattered. Maybe that was enough. Meanwhile, according to David, my father was falling apart. The story had spread through his veteran community within 48 hours. His Navy buddies were calling him. His VFW friends were asking questions. Everyone wanted to know why he'd been hiding his daughter's accomplishments, why he'd been calling a Navy commander a clerk, why he'd been so blind. One of his oldest friends, a retired Marine colonel named Henderson, apparently cornered him at a VFW meeting. "Ed," Henderson said, according to David, who heard it secondhand, "you've been telling us for years your daughter pushes papers. Meanwhile, she's out there running missions most of us couldn't even dream of. What the hell were you thinking?" My father didn't have an answer. He started going to therapy. David told me this a week after the barbecue. He called the VA and got a referral. He's going twice a week. Why? I asked. He said he needs to figure out why he treated you the way he did, why he couldn't see what was right in front of him. I didn't know what to say to that. It was more than I'd expected, but it also wasn't enough. Not yet. 2.5 weeks after the barbecue, my father called. Not a voicemail this time, but an actual call I answered. Audrey, he said. Thank you for picking up. Hi, Dad. I've been going to therapy. David probably told you. He did. The therapist says I have a problem with control, that I tried to make you smaller so I wouldn't have to worry about you, that I couldn't handle the idea of you in danger, so I convinced myself you weren't. He took a shaky breath. She says I've been emotionally abusive, that I invalidated you for years and then blamed you for not trusting me with the truth. I closed my eyes. She's right. I know, and I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't give you back the years I wasted. But I'm sorry. Why didn't you come to my ceremonies, Dad? Why didn't you ever ask what I actually did? Because I was scared, he said simply. Scared of losing you like I lost your mother. Scared of accepting that you were doing dangerous things I couldn't protect you from. It was easier to pretend you had a safe desk job than to face the truth. That's not protection, I said. That's erasure. I know that now, his voice broke. Your mother told me before she died that you were going to do extraordinary things. She told me not to try to keep you small because I was scared, and I did it anyway. I did exactly what she warned me not to do. I felt tears burning in my eyes. She believed in me? She did, and I should have too. He paused. Your promotion ceremony is next week. I know I don't deserve to be there, but I'm asking anyway. Can I come? I thought about it. Thought about all the ceremonies he'd missed, all the moments he'd chosen something else over supporting me. Thought about the hurt and the anger and the years of feeling invisible. And then I thought about my mother, about what she would want. You can come, I said finally. But Dad, if you come as a guest. You don't get a special seat. You don't get introduced. You sit with everyone else and you watch. And afterward, we're going to have a conversation about what happens next. About whether we can actually fix this or if it's too broken. Okay, he said. I'll take whatever you're willing to give me. After I hung up, I sat in my office at Quantico and stared out the window. Lieutenant Chen knocked and came in. You all right, ma'am? My father's coming to the promotion ceremony. Chen nodded slowly. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Angry, sad, hopeful, all of it at once. That sounds about right, she said. For what it's worth, ma'am, I think you're doing the right thing, giving him a chance. It's more than he deserves, but it's who you are. Yeah, I said. I guess it is. The ceremony was scheduled for the following Saturday, and whatever happened there would determine everything that came next. They finally understood who I was. The best revenge is living well, and I was just getting started. The day of my promotion ceremony dawned clear and cold, one of those early June mornings in Virginia where you can still see your breath in the air before the sun burns it off. I stood in front of my mirror in my quarters at Quantico, adjusting my service dress blue uniform. The ribbons were aligned perfectly, the brass polished, every detail precise. This was who I was. Commander Audrey Bailey, about to become Captain Audrey Bailey, United States Navy. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Dad and I are on the way. He's nervous. He wore his old uniform. I stared at the message for a long moment. My father, wearing his uniform, the one he'd kept in a garment bag for 15 years, probably too tight now, definitely out of date. But he was wearing it anyway. For me. Lieutenant Chen appeared in my doorway. Mom, it's time. Everyone's gathering. I took one last look in the mirror, touched my mother's compass necklace, and nodded. Let's go. The ceremony was held in the courtyard at the Special Warfare Command Facility. Security was tight. This was a classified unit after all, but we'd been cleared to have guests for the formal promotion. About 50 people had gathered. My entire Unit 77 team, officers from JSOC, Vice Admiral Brennan, Commander Cross, and somewhere in the back, my father and David. I didn't look for them as I walked to the front. I kept my eyes forward, my bearing military, my mind focused. This moment was mine. I'd earned it, and nobody could take it away from me. Vice Admiral Brennan presided over the ceremony. She was 52, the first woman to command a SEAL team, and my mentor for the last 6 years. She stood at the podium and began her remarks. Today we promote Commander Audrey Bailey to the rank of Captain 06 United States Navy. Commander Bailey has served with distinction for 12 years, demonstrating exceptional leadership, tactical brilliance, and unwavering dedication to our nation's security. She paused, looking directly at me. But more than that, she has broken barriers. She has proven that excellence has no gender. She has commanded respect in rooms that didn't want to give it. And she has saved lives through operations that history will never record, but that matter more than most people will ever know. She gestured for me to come forward. I walked to the front, stood at attention, and Vice Admiral Brennan pinned the new rank insignia to my uniform. Captain's Eagles. 4 years of college, 12 years of service, countless operations, and I was here. Captain Bailey, Brennan said, stepping back and saluting me. I returned the salute. Thank you, ma'am. The crowd applauded. I turned to face them, and that's when I saw my father. He was in the back row, standing between David and Patricia. His old uniform fit poorly, tight around the middle, loose in the shoulders. His hair was grayer than I remembered, and he was crying. Not quiet tears, real crying. His face was red, his shoulders shaking, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. David had a hand on his shoulder. Patricia was offering him tissues. Our eyes met across the courtyard, and I saw something I'd never seen before in my father's face. Pure, unfiltered pride. Not the conditional pride he'd given David. Not the dismissive approval he'd offered me before. Real pride. The kind that says, I see you, and I understand, and I'm in awe. The ceremony continued with additional remarks, the reading of my orders, and formal photographs. Through it all, I was aware of my father watching. When it finally ended and people began to mingle, Commander Cross approached first. Captain Bailey, he said, emphasizing my new rank. Congratulations, ma'am. Well deserved. Thank you, Commander. I hope I didn't overstep at the barbecue, he said quietly. But your father needed to know. You didn't overstep. You told the truth. I'm grateful. He nodded, then leaned in slightly. For what it's worth, ma'am, you're a legend in the JSOC community. We tell stories about Unit 77 operations. They're teaching your Yemen plan at the training centers. You've changed how we think about joint operations. The team did that, not me. The team executed, you led. He shook my hand and moved on. Lieutenant Chen was next, grinning. Captain, I like the sound of that. Me too, I admitted. Your father's hovering near the edge of the crowd. He looks terrified. Good, I said. Then softer. Is he okay? Honestly, he looks like a man who just realized he almost lost the most important thing in his life. I found my father 20 minutes later, after I'd spoken with Vice Admiral Brennan, posed for official photos, and accepted congratulations from my team. He was standing near the parking lot with David and Patricia, clearly uncertain whether he should approach or wait. I walked over. Dad! Audrey! His voice cracked on my name. Captain Bailey. You were... He couldn't finish the sentence. He just stood there, this 64-year-old man in an ill-fitting uniform crying in front of his daughter. Let's talk, I said. Privately. We walked to a quiet area near the building, away from the crowd. Patricia and David stayed behind. When we stopped, my father turned to face me. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm so sorry. For what specifically? I asked. I needed him to name it, to understand it. For not seeing you, he said. For making you feel like what you did didn't matter. For spending 15 years calling you a clerk when you were commanding operations that saved lives. For missing your ceremonies because I was too proud or too scared or too stupid to face who you'd become. He took a shaky breath. For being the father who made you feel invisible when you deserved to feel seen. I nodded slowly. Okay. I've been in therapy twice a week. The therapist says I have unresolved trauma from losing your mother. That I was so afraid of losing you too that I convinced myself you weren't in danger. If you were just a clerk, you'd be safe. If you were just doing admin work, I wouldn't have to lie awake at night terrified that you'd die like she did. That's not how it works, Dad. I know that now, but I didn't want to know it then. He looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. You're extraordinary. What you've done, what you've accomplished, it's beyond anything I could have imagined. And I'm sorry it took a stranger telling me for me to believe it. He wasn't a stranger, I said. He's someone I saved. Someone whose life depended on me making the right calls. That's who I am, Dad. That's what I do. I know. And I'm proud of you. So proud I can barely breathe. I wanted to accept it, to let his apology fix everything, but I couldn't, not yet. I need you to understand something, I said. This isn't just about one barbecue or one misunderstanding. This is about 15 years of systematic dismissal. Every time I came home, every promotion, every achievement, you made me feel like I had to choose between being your daughter and being myself. And I chose myself. I had to. But it hurt. I know, he whispered. So here's what happens now, I continued. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be different. You don't get to minimize what I do. You don't get to compare me to other people's children. When someone asks what I do, you say, She serves her country. I can't discuss details. That's it. Okay? And you keep going to therapy, not for me, for you, because you need to deal with your fear and your need for control. I will. And Dad? I looked him directly in the eye. You never, ever call me a clerk again. I won't. I swear I won't. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then my father reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. I want you to have this. I opened it. Inside was his navy ring, the one he'd worn for 30 years. The gold was dull from wear, the insignia scratched and faded. I can't take this, I said. Please, you earned it more than I ever did. You've done things I never had the courage to do. You've become everything your mother believed you would be. His voice broke again. I should have believed it too, but I didn't, and I'm sorry. I looked at the ring. It was too big for my finger, meant for a man's hand, but it represented something. His service, his recognition, his attempt to bridge the gap between us. I'll keep it, I said, but I'm not wearing it. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I'll keep it. He nodded, relief flooding his face. That's enough. Thank you. We walked back to the gathering together. People were starting to leave, heading to a reception at the officers' club. Vice Admiral Brennan was waiting for me. Captain Bailey, we're ready for you at the reception. I'll be right there, ma'am. I turned to my father. Are you coming? He looked surprised. You want me there? I want to see if you can be the father I need you to be. So yes, come to the reception, meet my team, see who I actually am. At the reception, I watched my father interact with my world for the first time. He met Lieutenant Chen, who shook his hand politely but coolly. He met several of my unit members, young officers who treated me with respect and affection. He saw Commander Cross again, who said, Sir, your daughter saved my life. I hope you know how lucky you are. And he met Vice Admiral Brennan, who looked him up and down and said, Mr. Bailey, your daughter is one of the finest officers I've ever served with. I hope you're finally beginning to understand that. I am, ma'am, my father said quietly. I really am. Later, as the reception was winding down, my father found me near the window overlooking the river. Your mother would be so proud of you, he said. I know, she always was. I'm proud of you too. I hope you know that now. I looked at him, this man who'd hurt me for so long, who'd finally started to understand what he'd done. I'm starting to, I said. But Dad, pride isn't enough. I need respect. I need you to see me as I am, not as you wish I was. I do, he said. I see you, Audrey. Finally, and you're magnificent. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something, a beginning, a crack in the wall that had stood between us for so long. As I drove back to my quarters that night, I thought about what Vice Admiral Brennan had said weeks earlier about building your own family, about being seen by the people who mattered. I'd done that. Unit 77 was my family. Chen, Cross, Brennan, all of them. They saw me. They respected me. They understood what I'd built. But maybe, just maybe, I could have both. My chosen family and a healed relationship with my father. It wouldn't be easy. It would take time and work and probably more therapy than either of us wanted to think about. But it was possible. That night, I put my father's ring in my desk drawer next to my mother's compass, two pieces of my history, one representing who I'd been, the other representing who I'd become. I was Captain Audrey Bailey, commanding officer of Unit 77, one of the youngest 06s in Navy history. I'd earned every step of that journey through grit and determination and refusing to be made small. My father had introduced me wrong once. He'd called me his little clerk and dismissed everything I'd accomplished. But I'd introduced myself correctly every day after that. Through my work, through my leadership, through the lives I'd saved, and the operations I'd run, and the respect I'd earned from the people who mattered. And in the end, that made all the difference. 1 year later, I received orders to the Pentagon as Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare. It was a significant promotion, a position that would shape Navy strategy for years to come. My father was the first person I called. "It's incredible, Audrey," he said, and I could hear the genuine pride in his voice. "Captain at 34, and now this? You're extraordinary." "Thanks, Dad." Can I come to the ceremony when you take the position?" "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. We'd been rebuilding slowly, monthly dinners when I had leave, phone calls that went beyond surface pleasantries, therapy sessions where he worked through his fear and control issues. It wasn't perfect. Some wounds take years to heal, but it was real. At the Pentagon, I built on the work I'd started with Unit 77. I advocated for more women in special operations command positions. I mentored young officers who reminded me of myself, brilliant, dedicated, and fighting battles they shouldn't have to fight. I made sure they had the support I'd had to build for myself. And sometimes, late at night in my Pentagon office, I'd think about that barbecue, about Commander Cross seeing my tattoo, about my father's face when he finally understood. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like grief for all the years we'd lost. But it also felt like hope, because we hadn't lost everything, just time. And time, I'd learned, could be reclaimed if both people were willing to do the work. My father came to my Pentagon swearing in. He wore his old uniform again, still ill-fitting, but he wore it with pride. Afterward, he shook my hand and said, "Your mother was right about you. You did extraordinary things, and I'm grateful I lived long enough to see it." "Me too, Dad. I'm sorry it took so long." "I know, but we're here now. That's what matters." He called me his little clerk once, but I was never his to define. I built myself. I earned my rank, my position, my respect. And along the way, I learned the most important lesson of all. You can't make someone see you until they're willing to look. But when they finally do, when they finally understand who you are and what you've accomplished, that's not revenge. That's redemption for both of you. If this story resonated with you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to prove yourself to someone who should have believed in you from the start? What finally made them see the truth? And for the parents out there, how do you make sure your children know you see them for who they really are? Tell me your story below. I read every single one.